What's up, guys? John here, and we're going to talk today about your running cadence, why it matters. Should you pay attention to it? Should you fix it? Do you need to change it? All right. We're going to talk about all those things, and then some other things to help round out the conversation. But ultimately, your running cadence is just how many steps you're taking per minute. That's just how we measure it. That's the unit of time, and those are the metrics that we use. What it represents is it gives us an idea of how much stress is coming back into your body. Because Newton's law says that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I don't know how to punch because I've actually never punched anybody before. But if you hit the wall's hitting back into your hand. Your foot hits the ground is pushing back into your foot, right? We've talked about this before. It's the ground reaction force. We've talked about cadence before, and I think it's worthwhile for us to kind of circle back and clean it up a little bit. So we'll talk about what cadence is, why it matters, how you can measure it, and things like that, okay? I guess the easy part is how you can measure it. A lot of the watches will actually do that for you nowadays, right? So there'll be a metronome in there to set your cadence, but there's also an accelerometer in there that can help measure your cadence, because one swing of the arm is synonymous with one step of the foot or one swing of the foot. So steps per minute is how we measure it. Your watch can measure it, or just a good old-fashioned stopwatch and counting left, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, for 60 seconds. So that's your cadence, that's your steps per minute. And why are we gonna look at it? Because it can give us some good information for you. It can help us decide whether there's a way for you to become more efficient while running. And running is a game of economy. If there's anything that I've said before, I tell all my students that come in when we start to work with runners, running is a game of economy. How efficient can your body be? How well can you handle the next run or the next step or next week's runs, right? Can you be effective training but also recover well enough to repeat the efforts, okay? So running is a game of economy, and we wanna make you more economical. Now, years ago, Jack Daniels, who's a big name in the running community, postulated that 180 steps per minute was kind of like the best and the ideal, because he witnessed most runners at the Olympics were kind of hovering around that 180 steps per minute mark. Now, cutscene, okay? We actually want to get away from that. There is no one ideal cadence. We see that a lot of runners will tend to hover around different cadences, and certainly there will be differences if you're much taller, if you have longer legs, because you have to cover more ground, and it just takes you longer to get your foot across, and so you're going to be taking less steps per minute. And so, contrasted to somebody who's much shorter, they're going to have shorter strides, and they'll be able to handle more steps per minute. So there are differences from runner to runner that will actually dictate what your effective cadence is going to be. And so we don't want to go around telling people that there's one set number that you have to reach, okay? But there is a notion among researchers and amongst clinicians, just in our anecdotal experience, that shows the correct number for you is probably just a little bit more than what you're doing right now. Okay, so we don't always want to go ahead and pull the cadence lever for people. We don't want to change a runner if they're effective. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We absolutely get that. But if there's a runner that comes in and they are having some struggles, or most recreational runners or beginning runners or runners with a young training age, whatever category we want to put you in, most of us are not Olympians. Any of you that are Olympians that are watching my channel, hello, hit like, hit subscribe, share it with your friends. We think we're pretty good. But by and large, the lion's share of people that are watching this right now is we can afford to get improvements, and we're gonna take all the free speed we can get, okay? All the low-hanging fruit that we can get. So most of us agree, and the research supports that 5 to 10% above what your normal cadence is right now is probably your sweet spot. You can afford to bump it up a little bit. So why do we wanna do that, okay? Well, remember when I said that your foot hitting the ground represents the force coming back into you? Well, think of it this way. There's X amount of force to get you from point A to point B. I don't care whether it's 5 feet or a mile, 5 miles, 26.2 miles, or an ultra marathon. To get you from point A to point B takes X amount of force because of how much you weigh, wind resistance, going uphill or downhill, things like that. Those things are very set. You can't change those from day to day. So X amount of force from point A to point B. Now let's take all that force and spread it over more steps, which is a higher cadence, or less steps, which is a lower cadence. Well, if I have $100 and I have to spread it between 10 people or 100 people, if I spread it between 100 people, everybody's getting less. So if you have X amount of force and you have more steps in point A to point B, every step gets less force. And so that's less force that your body has to absorb each time. So it just helps mitigate the overall stress from each step that you're taking. It's still the same amount of force, but it's just spread over more steps, and so it's a little easier on the body. So we know that increasing cadence can help manage and reduce stress on the joints at the hip, the knee, the foot, and the ankle. So that's a good thing as far as we're concerned. If you have some room to improve, we generally say let's possibly look at cadence once we kind of sort everything else out. We still want to focus on proper strength training, proper programming, right? Those things will always come first as far as injury reduction. However, cadence can be something that's beneficial to most of us runners. So, reducing the level of stress at the joints is always important. There's something called a 5-20 rule. A 5% increase in cadence represents a 20% reduction in stress at the level of the knee. So I can't tell you how many times I've had a runner come in and I look and they're well below what I think is appropriate for them as far as cadence. We get them on the treadmill, we bump it up a little bit, and they have a lot more comfort. The pain goes away, and that can be really easy. It makes me look really smart too. So we do want to play around with cadence from time to time. It can be very beneficial for most runners, and it's just something we find is an important enough topic that we want you to understand it, right? There's not that much that goes into running from an equipment standpoint, proper shoes, time and space. Well, let's talk about cadence too, okay? So cadence is something we have to do, and it's something that we can manipulate. It's not directly respective of speed. A higher cadence does not mean you have to run faster, okay? And a slower cadence does not mean you run slower. You can run a given speed at multiple cadences, and you can also change your cadence for different speeds all over the spectrum. So a lot of good runners can do that. That's something I've challenged myself to do over the past few years, and it's something I want to get into here. And so there's lots of drills that you can do to improve your cadence. Tracking your cadence, like I said, is as easy as setting up your watch and tracking it, or getting a stopwatch and running for a couple minutes and just seeing what your average is per minute. But getting into increasing cadence, we can get you doing drills. Strength training is important. Doing calf raises at an appropriate tempo is really important to help get your calf muscles and the foot and ankle complex used to actually going for a certain tempo and certain patterns. And so you can start with a lower cadence and a lower tempo for calf raises and then work yourself up. Same thing, you can do that for a step down or a lateral step. You can do it at certain cadences and certain tempos to build up your tolerance to doing it. Skipping drills, marching drills. These are all things that are also very beneficial for training your body and your brain to get your muscles and legs moving quicker to be able to adopt that cadence while you're out there on the road or the trail running. So those are some great drills that you can use. And then obviously getting on the treadmill, playing around with certain things there is really important too. And so I'm gonna hop on the treadmill now and I'm gonna film myself at different cadences for different speeds to show you guys that it's possible and to show you how it can even clean up your stride a little bit and often help with some things that runners may feel that they struggle with. So we're not gonna go out and change everybody's running form and running technique. A lot of times just increasing the cadence, if it helps you find your sweet spot, is also going to clean up your running gait and your running style too. So all in all, it just makes for some really good low-hanging fruit, something that runners can practice, especially in the off season. But we think it's really important, and we want you guys to get involved in this too. So without further ado, guys, stay tuned. We'll throw up some videos for the exercises and the drills, to kind of manipulate your cadence and change it. But for now, I'm going to hop on the treadmill. See you guys later.